I'm Rachel from Douentza Garden in Ireland, and you're very welcome to this video all about pruning my giant monstrous Brugmansia sanguinea. Now this winter flowering Brugmansia flowers all winter long, and by spring it really time to put some manners on it. So it's a job for the loppers today, and let's deal with that beast. You don't think it's big? Look. Look how big it is. Okay, so we're now inside the greenhouse. This is the Brugmansia here behind me. And this is a Brugmansia that I don't grow in a pot. So it's grown in the greenhouse border where it has access, its roots have access to the world outside. And the result is that it grows really, really vigorously. Brugmansias, of course, are from South America, and the normal ones that people grow are the ones that flower in summer. But this one is a winter flowering one. Now, it has a couple of different things about it. The first is obviously that it flowers in winter, but the second is the vibrancy and strongness of these beautiful orange flowers, because normally Brugmansias, they come in really quite pastel shades. On the downside, it has no scent. And on the upside, on the positive side, it's a lot more cold hardy than the others are. So in my climate, I live in zone 9, where the summers, actually, this has nothing to do with zone 9, I guess, but the summers in Ireland tend to be really quite dull, or they can be really quite dull and rainy. And the result of that is that other Brugmansias can fail to flower, whereas this one is quite happy with that kind of summer. Now, technically, Brugmansia sanguinea is hardy from zone 9, but there is no way I could grow this outdoors in my garden. So I have it here in the greenhouse where I can enjoy its beautiful flowers all through the winter when there's very little going on. But can you see how well this does? It is such a vigorous plant, and twice a year I need to give it a drastic pruning. So it's the end of March now, we have good weather, and I am going to put some manners on this beast. I'm going to cut it back an awful lot. Now this plant will kind of give a smattering of flowers through the summer, and after you prune a Brugmansia, you will probably have to wait for about a month for it to come into flower again, but that's okay. I mean, I certainly can't deal with it like this. I can't even get into the greenhouse anymore, so we need to just cut it back a good bit. With Brugmansias in general, you can alternatively prune their roots, and that will encourage Brugmansias to spring into vigorous new root growth, but there's no getting at the roots on this plant because they're in the border. Other Brugmansias, you would tend to prune them in autumn. So if you live in a climate like mine, or perhaps a bit warmer, you grow your Brugmansias outdoors in the summer, you benefit from those beautiful scented flowers, and in autumn you bring them in under protection, and at that point in time you may consider pruning it, because you know, like just to have a smaller plant to have to overwinter. This one, on the other hand, because it flowers through the winter, it needs to be pruned in spring. So there are a couple of things to consider when pruning any Brugmansia, or indeed any kind of big tree. This is a small tree, I guess it's classified as, but it's certainly big for my greenhouse. And when you start pruning, you need to ensure that you create a nice framework. If you have a summer flowering Brugmansia that has better manners than mine, then you might be looking for pruning it to a single stem with branches off of it. And in fact, it is important not to cut your Brugmansia too low, because as we all know, Brugmansias flower in the top growth, and it's for that reason that if you want to propagate a Brugmansia, you're going to take your cutting from up high rather than down low, because down low that cutting is going to take several years to flower, whereas up high it will flower immediately. But I digress. So we would normally try and create a framework here, but it's so hard to see what's going on. So the first thing I think what I'm going to do is just cut a few branches back just to be able to see what's going on. And look at this, beautiful, beautiful orange flowers. And down they go onto the floor. Now, where else? One thing I really want to address is the height of this plant, because it is growing up and out through the bubble wrap. Now that bubble wrap will come off very soon. It's something I put on the greenhouse for winter just to insulate it, and I take it off in spring. There's no way I'd get it off at the moment with what the Brugmansia is doing. So we want to cut it down. Now I am going to cut it, say, about here. Oh goodness, I'd say that's 2 or 3 foot I'm taking off of the top. And all of this plant material, of course, can be used as cutting material. Personally, I find that with Brugmansia sanguinea, it doesn't propagate when you place these stems in water, whereas the summer flowering Brugmansias, if you put them into a glass of water, you'll get roots in no time at all. But this one, I think you really need to propagate it from soil. Okay, so brutal though this may seem, and I think it's quite therapeutic to do these big jobs sometimes and just remove so much plant growth. The first time I did it, I was so apprehensive that my Brugmansia wasn't going to come back, or that I'd kill it, or that it wouldn't flower for the longest time. But within a month it was up there and flowering again. And look at that, doesn't that look better already? Just to take a little bit more height off the thing. And at this stage in the game, I'm not worrying too much about cutting to a leaf or cutting to a joint, which you have to do generally, but I can neaten it up again at a later stage. I mean, not a later stage. I can neaten it up after I have finished just reducing the size, and just make sure that all of my cuts are in sensible and appropriate places. Come on, big boy. Generally, with all pruning, what you need to do is to cut back to something. And in this case, I would cut back to a shoot or a leaf. You can cut back to a leaf even. In some cases, with some bushes, you can cut back to places where there's nothing growing, but you can see it's a node. So that means that something will sprout from there in a short period of time. So that's the way I will tidy up this bush afterwards, after I've just reduced the size. And I'm actually going to prune this a bit lower than I did last time. I don't know how well you can see that, but maybe if we just look at the branch I've just cut. So this is where I cut it. And you can see from looking at it that this is where I cut it last time. So I'm just going a little bit lower, and that's because it just grew back too vigorously and too quickly last time. I nearly had no time to breathe before it was up and needing pruning again. So now I've roughly reduced the plant to the height I wanted, and I'm going to deal with the front bit. And you know, this is in front of my greenhouse door. It's planted just beside the door, and that's because I love to get a jungle tropical feel whenever I step into the greenhouse. But the downside is that it comes out and covers the door. So we're next going to just reduce here so it doesn't lean out so much. And this may seem pretty brutal, and I guess it is pretty brutal, but it's a plant that can take it. Now you can see the outside world again. And hey, you can see the inside world again down to the back of the greenhouse, which we weren't able to see up until just very recently. That branch there is annoying me, so that's going. And this one here. Okay, so at last we can see the framework of the plant. I'll just move out there so that you can see it a bit better. And you can see I have so many branches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 main stems. You know, I think I could probably take out one. This one, for example. So if we look very close at this branch here, it's actually crossing over. And one of the basic rules of pruning is to remove crossing branches. Now this one I want to take out right at the base so that it won't regrow. Now I'm going to do my best to approach this branch from the inside so I can get a clean low down cut, which is actually quite difficult because of the other branches. Okay, in here. We will go in here. No, we won't. Okay, I think. There we go. So this Brugmansia is looking so much more light and sunny already, don't you think? I guess the next thing really to do is to just neaten it up a little bit by removing some of this top growth that's crossing over and maybe a little bit more from the top. But do you see what you can finally see? So this is a lobelia, a tropical lobelia called fistulosa, and it's in flower. So we don't want to obstruct that in any way, which means, you know what, we'll take a couple of branches off just to help with showing off the lobelia to full effect. Such a shame to take off a flower, but you know what, they'll be back before long. Okay, so I'm just really going to tidy this up a bit, remove it another few bits, and even up here you can see it's going into the bubble wrap. It can afford to lose some of that top growth. And very important with this bush that tends to lean out and doesn't have space behind to go back because of the glass is it's very important not to leave it so that it's heavy on this side, that the weight of its own branches might break it as it leans out. So that's why I cut it back a bit. In theory, I'd like it to overhang the path a little bit, but I don't want to risk the branches breaking and splitting the trunk. So, as you can see, I do have a little bit of cutting material I could use to make a Brugmansia or two. Okay, so I think that's just about it. And that is how I prune my Brugmansia sanguinea twice a year. I will make a note in one of my greenhouse tours a little bit later on when I next prune it. But today is the 28th of March. This is what I do, and this is what I do at least twice a year. So I think probably growing it in a greenhouse border in my climate is a very good way to get the best out of this plant. The only danger, and this is something I'm slightly worried about, is that goodness knows where those vigorous roots have gone to under the greenhouse. I don't root prune it, so they won't get any more vigorous, but I'm sure the fact that I so arduously cut back the top growth is encouraging it to, I don't know, to send out more roots, in which case the spread is going to be quite wide, and I hope it does not affect the greenhouse. We will see longer term. Thank you for watching this video and for subscribing, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.